What if the vegetables you buy at the supermarket are only the beginning? Somewhere in the world right now, a pumpkin is growing that weighs more than a small car. A cabbage is being harvested that could feed an entire village. And a carrot is being pulled from the ground that is longer than a grown man is tall. These are not myths. These are not special effects. These are real vegetables grown by real people that challenged everything we thought we knew about what a plant could become. Welcome to Flora, Fana. 1. Giant pumpkin. The world record pumpkin does not look like a pumpkin anymore. It looks like an enormous orange boulder that somehow settled into a field and refused to leave. In 2021, a pumpkin grown by Stefano Cutrupi in Italy was officially weighed at 2,702 pounds, heavier than most compact cars and larger than a king-sized bed. Growing a pumpkin to this size is not gardening, it is engineering. The plant requires precise soil composition, hand pollination, daily measurements, and a dedicated growing structure to support the fruit as it expands, sometimes by 40 to 50 pounds per day at peak growth. Growers talk about their giant pumpkins the way others talk about athletes in training, monitoring every variable, adjusting every condition, watching the numbers climb. At that size, a pumpkin stops being food. It becomes an argument about what dedication can produce. 2. Giant cabbage. In 2012, Robb of Alaska grew a cabbage that weighed 138.25 pounds, setting a world record that still stands. To understand that number, consider that an average supermarket cabbage weighs roughly 2 pounds. Scott's cabbage weighed as much as 69 of them combined. Alaska's extreme summer conditions, up to 20 hours of daylight during the growing season, drive photosynthesis at a rate impossible in lower latitudes, allowing vegetables to accumulate mass that would be unachievable elsewhere. The cabbage was so large it required 2 people to carry it and had to be transported in a wheelbarrow to the weigh station. Its outer leaves alone were wider than a human torso. What Alaska's summers lack in warmth, they compensate for entirely in light. And some vegetables, given enough of it, simply do not know when to stop. 3. Giant carrot. A carrot pulled from the ground in 2016 by Christopher Qualley in Minnesota measured 22.4 pounds. A single carrot grown in a single season, weighing as much as a large household cat. The secret, Qualley has explained, is soil depth. Carrots grow downward, following the path of least resistance through loose, deep, carefully prepared earth, freed from rocks, aerated to extraordinary depth, enriched with precisely balanced nutrients. In ordinary garden soil, a carrot hits resistance within inches and widens instead of lengthening, producing the stubby shapes familiar from any produce aisle. Given the right conditions, the same plant keeps going. A carrot is not limited by its nature. It is limited by the ground it is given. There is something in that observation that extends well beyond gardening. 4. Giant watermelon. The heaviest watermelon ever recorded weighed 350.5 pounds and was grown by Chris Kent in Tennessee in 2013. It belonged to the Carolina cross variety, a cultivar bred specifically for size, capable of producing fruits that dwarf everything else in the melon family under the right conditions. A single Carolina cross plant is given 1 fruit. All other developing melons are removed so that every resource the vine produces flows into a single growing point. The result, after a 120-day growing season with precise watering, approximately 2 inches of water per week, and nutrient-rich loose soil, is a watermelon that requires a forklift to move. Kent's record-breaking fruit was over 4 feet long. A watermelon that large contains enough flesh to serve several hundred people. All of it grown from a single seed, in a single season, in a single Tennessee field. 5. Giant zucchini. Left to its own devices, a zucchini will not stop growing. Most gardeners harvest them young, at 6 to 8 inches, because that is when the flavor and texture are best. But a zucchini that is simply left on the vine and forgotten will continue expanding day after day, week after week, until it resembles something closer to a small log than a vegetable. The world record zucchini, grown by Giovanni Batista Scozzafava in Canada, measured 8 feet 3 inches in length and weighed 65 pounds. The flesh at that size is largely water and seeds, not particularly edible by most standards. But that was never the point. The point is that the plant was doing exactly what it was designed to do: growing, allocating resources, filling space, and no one told it to stop. Sometimes the most extraordinary results come simply from stepping back and allowing something to become what it already wants to be. 6. Giant onion. The world record onion weighed 18 pounds, 11.84 ounces, and was grown by Tony Glover in the United Kingdom in 2014. An onion of that size measures roughly the diameter of a basketball and requires both hands to lift comfortably. Onions of record size are almost exclusively grown in the north of England, specifically in Northumberland, where a tradition of giant vegetable growing stretches back generations, and where specific soil conditions and long summer days combine with decades of accumulated horticultural knowledge passed between growers like family secrets. Tony Glover has grown giant onions for most of his adult life. He describes the process as a year-round commitment, starting seeds in heated greenhouses in December, transplanting carefully through spring, and monitoring daily through summer. A single onion, a full year of attention. At the weigh-in, it beat its nearest competitor by less than an ounce. 7. Giant leek. In the same tradition of Northern England's vegetable growing culture, the giant leek competition is taken with a seriousness that outsiders often find surprising. The world record leek, grown by Paul Rochester in 2021, weighed 21 pounds 2 ounces, roughly the weight of a 2-year-old child. Competitive leek growers guard their methods carefully. Soil compositions are not shared, feeding schedules are not discussed. Some growers have been developing their own seed lines for decades, selecting only from the largest specimens year after year, gradually nudging the genetics towards size. The leek is planted, fed, protected from frost, and monitored with instruments that would not look out of place in a laboratory. It is grown in a pot in a greenhouse under conditions so controlled that the word gardening feels inadequate. At the highest level, growing a giant leek is closer to craftsmanship than agriculture. 8. Giant turnip. Scott Robb, the same Alaskan grower who set the world record for cabbage, also holds the record for the world's heaviest turnip. It weighed 39.09 pounds and was grown under the same conditions that make Alaska so unusual for record vegetables. Extraordinary summer daylight driving photosynthesis far beyond what is possible in lower latitudes. A turnip of this size measures roughly 2 feet across. Its purple and white skin, normally modest and compact, stretched across a surface area that made it look like something that belonged in a different classification entirely. Less like a root vegetable and more like a piece of abstract sculpture, the earth had been quietly assembling underground. Alaska has produced more world vegetable records than almost any other region on the planet, not because of any special seed, not because of exceptional soil, simply because of light, 20 hours of it every day for months. 9. Giant tomato. The world's heaviest tomato weighed 10 pounds 12.7 ounces and was grown by Dan Sutherland in Washington State in 2020. A single tomato, nearly 11 pounds. Sutherland grew it from a variety called Domingo, a cultivar developed specifically for producing large fruits, and managed every variable with careful precision throughout the growing season. The tomato was so heavy that its own weight required external support to prevent it from tearing away from the vine before it fully ripened. Its diameter was comparable to a volleyball. Sliced open, a tomato of this size reveals the same internal structure as any other. Seeds, gel, flesh, simply multiplied across a scale that makes the familiar look suddenly strange. It is still, unmistakably, a tomato. Just one that decided the ordinary version was only a starting point. 10. Giant garlic, elephant garlic. Technically a variant of the leek family rather than true garlic. Can produce individual bulbs the size of a human fist, with single cloves larger than most complete garlic bulbs from a supermarket. But true record garlic achieves something even beyond this. Growers in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest have developed strains through years of selective seed saving that produce bulbs weighing over 2 pounds, a single head of garlic heavy enough to require 2 hands to hold. Its flavor is milder than standard garlic. The size dilutes the concentration of allicin compounds that produce the familiar sharpness. But the visual impact is immediate and absolute. Something so recognizable, so ordinary in its smaller form, scaled to a size that makes recognition itself feel temporarily uncertain. As if the plant understood what it was supposed to look like and simply chose to exceed it. 11. Giant celery. Most people have held a bunch of celery without giving it particular thought. The world record celery stalk, grown by Joan and Lionel Ryder in the United Kingdom, weighed 51 pounds and stood over 6 feet tall. A single celery plant, taller than most people, requiring a ladder to harvest the upper stalks. Celery is among the most water-dependent vegetables in existence, requiring consistent, deep moisture throughout its growing period to develop properly. At record size, a single plant can consume extraordinary volumes of water daily, its hollow stalks filling with fluid that accounts for much of its eventual weight. The Ryders grew theirs over a single season in carefully prepared beds, feeding and watering on a precise schedule. Something so familiar, so present in every kitchen and every diet, grown until it could look a person directly in the eye. 12. Giant parsnip. The world record parsnip grew to 6 feet 7 inches in length, taller than the average human adult, and was grown by David Thomas in the United Kingdom in 2011. Parsnips, like carrots, grow downward. Their size is limited almost entirely by what is beneath them, the depth, looseness, and preparation of the soil. Thomas prepared his growing bed to extraordinary depth, removing every stone, aerating every layer, creating a column of perfect growing medium that gave the root nowhere to go but down. The resulting parsnip, when finally pulled, was longer than its grower and required 2 people and considerable effort to extract without breaking. Its tapering form, wide at the crown, narrowing to a fine point far below the surface, looked less like a vegetable and more like a natural monument to patience and preparation. What grows beneath the ground is always a reflection of what was done to it before the seed was planted. 13. Giant bell pepper. The world record bell pepper weighed 1 pound 5.9 ounces and measured over 15 inches in circumference. Grown by Ian Neal in the United Kingdom in 2018. By the standards of other record vegetables, this may seem modest, but the bell pepper is a fruit that concentrates its energy into flavor and color rather than mass. Its natural tendency is toward quality, not quantity. To push it toward record size requires overriding that tendency entirely, maximizing water, nutrients, and space available to a single fruit while suppressing the plant's instinct to spread its resources across many. The resulting pepper was a deep, vivid red. Its skin stretched smooth and tight across a volume that made it look almost artificial. Something designed on a screen rather than grown in soil. Ian Neal has held multiple world vegetable records simultaneously. He describes giant vegetable growing not as a competition, but as a conversation with the plant, listening to what it needs and providing it without compromise. 14. Giant courgette / marrow. The world record marrow, the fully matured form of the courgette, weighed 130 pounds and was grown by Brad Wursten in the United States. A marrow of this size is roughly 5 feet long and requires a dedicated growing frame to prevent it from collapsing under its own weight as it develops. The skin hardens as it grows, transitioning from the soft green of a young courgette into something closer to the texture of a watermelon rind, thick, rigid, protective. Inside, the flesh is pale, watery, and largely tasteless at this scale. The sugars and flavors that make young courgettes desirable have been diluted across a volume no recipe was ever designed to accommodate. But it was grown, and it grew. And it reached a size that no one who had not seen it would have believed possible from a seed smaller than a thumbnail. That in the world of giant vegetables is the point entirely. 15. Giant cucumber. The world record cucumber grew to 3 feet 7 inches in length and was grown by Ian Neal, who appears at this point to have made extraordinary vegetables his life's work in Eastern Wales in 2011. A cucumber of this length requires a growing structure that supports it vertically from the vine, preventing its own weight from tearing it free before it reaches full size. Its skin at record length stretches into a pale, slightly waxy surface that bears little visual resemblance to the compact dark green cucumbers of any produce aisle. Inside, the structure is familiar. Seeds arranged in rows through watery flesh, simply extended across a length that makes the cross-section feel oddly small relative to the overall scale. Ian Neal grew this cucumber, a record cabbage, a record bell pepper, and multiple other record vegetables across his career. At some point, the question stops being how he does it. The question becomes what he sees in a seed that the rest of us do not. 16. Giant beetroot. The world record beetroot weighed 51 pounds 9.9 ounces and was grown by Ian Neal in 2001, one of his earliest records and still one of the most astonishing. A beetroot of this size measures roughly 2 feet in diameter at its widest point. Its deep burgundy purple color, the same pigment, beta-cyanin, that stains hands and cutting boards in any kitchen, is present across a surface area that makes the color feel almost architectural, like a planet rather than a vegetable. Beetroot grows as a swelling of the stem base just at or below the soil surface, meaning a significant portion of its mass is visible above ground as it develops, making the growth observable in a way that underground root vegetables do not allow. Growers describe watching a record beetroot develop as watching something almost alive with intention, expanding visibly, day by day, as if it knows it is being watched. 17. Giant kale. In the Azores, the Portuguese island chain sitting in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there grows a variety of kale called Couve Tronchuda that has been cultivated for so long in such isolation that it has developed into something found nowhere else on Earth. Caldo Verde Kale in the Azores grows into towering plants, reaching 6 to 10 feet in height, with enormous paddle-shaped leaves that locals harvest from the bottom of the plant upward over multiple years. A single plant can produce leaves continuously for a decade or more. The stems become woody and thick, more like small trees than vegetables. And in some villages, dried trunks have historically been used as walking sticks. Kale, in its most familiar form, is a modest leafy green sold in bundles at any grocery store. In the Azores, left to grow in Atlantic soil across Atlantic years, it becomes something else entirely, something that remembers what it was before anyone decided what size it was supposed to be. 18. Giant potato. In 2021, a couple in New Zealand, Colin and Donna Craig Brown, were digging in their garden when they unearthed something they initially mistook for a diseased root. It was a potato. It weighed 17 pounds, 15.7 ounces, which would have made it the heaviest potato ever officially recorded. They named it Doug. Doug was kept in the Craig Brown's freezer while DNA testing was arranged to confirm its species. The family took photographs with it, documented its extraordinary size, and submitted it to Guinness World Records. The tests came back inconclusive on official record status, but not on species. It was a potato. 17 pounds of potato grown accidentally in an ordinary New Zealand garden by people who were not trying to break any record. Doug now lives, frozen, in their home. Sometimes the most remarkable things are not grown on purpose. Sometimes you find them while looking for something else entirely. 19. Giant cauliflower. The world record cauliflower weighed 60 pounds, 9.3 ounces, and was grown by Alan Hattersley in the United Kingdom in 1999, a record that has stood for over 2 decades. A cauliflower of this size measures roughly 3 feet across at its widest point. Its white curd, the dense, tightly packed, flowering structure that forms the edible head, expands outward as conditions allow, building layer upon layer of undeveloped flower buds into a structure of remarkable geometric complexity. At record size, the fractal patterns visible in any ordinary cauliflower, the self-repeating spirals that follow mathematical principles found throughout nature, are present at a scale where they become genuinely dramatic. A vegetable that follows the same mathematical rules as galaxies and shells and snowflakes, simply given more room to demonstrate it. Alan Hattersley grew his record cauliflower in conditions he has described as nothing special. Good soil, consistent water, attention. Sometimes that is all anything needs. 20. Giant pumpkin. The growers. We began with the world's heaviest pumpkin. We end with the people who grow them. In towns across the United States, Canada, Germany, and the United Kingdom, there are communities of giant vegetable growers who have built their lives around a pursuit that the rest of the world largely considers eccentric. They share seeds from record-breaking plants, seeds that carry genetic potential accumulated through generations of selective growing. They travel to weigh-ins the way athletes travel to competitions. They study soil science, plant biology, and weather patterns with a dedication that rivals professional agriculture. They name their pumpkins. They sit with them in the field in the early mornings, measuring, watching, adjusting. The largest pumpkin ever grown began as a seed, smaller than a coin, carried the genetic memory of every record plant before it, and was placed into the ground by a person who believed, despite all reasonable expectation, that this one might be different. It was. Every record ever set in a field began with exactly that belief. And somewhere right now, in a garden no one has heard of yet, the next one is already growing. The vegetables in this video were not grown by machines or produced in laboratories. They were grown by individuals, patient, dedicated, curious people who looked at an ordinary seed and asked a simple question: how far can this go? The answers turned out to be extraordinary, and in fields and gardens around the world right now, that question is being asked again. Thank you for growing with us today. This is Flora Fana,